This week, we're going to be talking about nurturing a clear heart and mind. And this is really, really important. And that's really the goal of what we're doing with this mindfulness practice is to have a clear mind and also a clear heart. And traditionally, within these teachings, there is no difference and no separation between the heart and the mind. In fact, in the ancient language that it was spoken when these practices were taught 2,600 years ago, the word chitta is what it means. It translates to heart mind. So that's one and the same. And in our last module, we talked about working with difficult thoughts or having clarity of our mind, and that usually deals with stress and suffering. And what we touched on last time is that stress is how we react when we feel under pressure or threatened. And it usually happens when we're in a situation that we don't feel we can manage or control. That's just a recap. And when we have all of these different stresses, there's also the experience of regret. So regret is a negative cognitive or emotional state, and it involves blaming ourselves for something that like bad results or outcome, feeling a sense of loss or sorrow for what might have been, or wishing that we could undo something that we did in the past. And usually, yes, regrets are something that happened in the past that we wish we could do all over again. What would we do differently if we had the opportunity to go back and do it again? So if you can put in the chat box, I'd love to see what you think some people might regret. What are some of the things that people might regret? It's just some examples, and I'll read them out. If you can put in the chat box. Decisions. Yeah, so what kind of decisions might be something that you could regret? Perhaps a decision not to do something. Yeah, exactly. Not grabbing opportunities. There's also not spending time with your family. Yeah. Wasted opportunities, investments. Yes. Some cryptocurrency. Yeah, well, that depends on when you invest, right? Yeah, if you invested and then it crashed, definitely there's some regrets there. There's, they have asked some people who are on their deathbed, if there was anything in life that they might have regretted, and it's not being completely themselves, doing things for other people, doing things to please other people rather than really chasing what the opportunities that make them happy, or doing the things that would make them happy rather than always considering what other people might think. And those are some of the really major things that people regret. And there's the other end also, which is worry. And that is synonymous with anxiety or anticipatory anxiety. Okay, and it's the fear and worry about bad things that could happen. And things that can, worry can happen in a lot of different contexts, but these are usually the things that you can't predict or control. So it has to do with the unknown. It has to do with the future, right? So worry is always connected to the future. And sometimes we catastrophize too. We think that things are going to be so awful, like there's going to be, like some sort of what would you say? Like, there's a lot of things that we could catastrophize these days about the economy and, maybe the monkeypox or what have you, right? So we worry about the things that are not here yet. So if you can put in the chat box, what are some of the things that people worry about? The most common things that you can think about. What would people worry about? I can start it off with, not having enough money. Yes, failures. Definitely money is a very big thing for many people. Yes, health, relationships. Yeah. So some of these things we think that we don't really have control over, like age. That's for sure. Yeah. So there are myriad of things that we could occupy ourselves with and worry about. And usually the things that we occupy our minds with has something to do with either the past or the future. And this is something that we have learned from the very beginning of our time here together during this course. But what's the past? And the actual description or definition of the past is gone by in time and no longer existing. Okay, and so the synonyms are gone by, over and done with, no more, gone, done, dead and buried, finished or ended. And then the future is defined as the time or a period of time following the moment of speaking, or it's the time regarded as still to come. Okay, so it's time to come, time ahead, what lies ahead, the fullness of time, or the hereafter. So neither of those we can control clearly because it's not here in this moment. So the present moment is the place where we can actually make a difference, make the right choices according to what we would like the outcome to be. And yet at the same time, what's important is to not be attached to any outcome. What we do in this practice is to know what skillful means are, and then to try as best as we can to live within these guidelines. And if we trip or make that mistake and not follow it, that it's okay, that we do better next time. And that's the reminder. That's about remembering. That's what mindfulness is. So one is to not take what isn't given. Okay, so this is an example. It's quite hard. I had just been at a friend's house, and sitting at the table, she had a jar of pistachios and she hadn't offered it to me. I just started munching on it, while at the same time talking about how we can be good people, right? And so it's not only just a matter of stealing, but it's also, we wait for things to be offered to us, so that there's a clarity of things that, okay, well, I didn't take what hasn't been offered, so then there's no guilt there. We wait for things to be offered. Then there's also sensual misconduct, which we don't want to do anything that is not being given consent to. And I think that this is pretty clear. We don't really want to cause harm toward people. And that is the most important thing, actually. And I think there's a slide missing here, but there's telling the truth as much as you can. And if you're not able to tell the truth because it's not the right time or the right person, then that means that we try to, as best as we can, we just stay silent when we're unable to speak the truth. And then also to refuse intoxicants that cloud our minds, because whenever our minds are clouded, we have the tendency to do and say things that are not necessarily beneficial to us and to other people. And what's the most important here that's being outlined is that we do not cause harm. No harm toward anybody, including small things like ants and mosquitoes. And so there's a lot of difficulty in all of this, right? We don't take any life, or we don't say anything to harm other people, as well as cause harm to ourselves, most importantly. Now, if we were to just go by one thing, which is not to even take a life, take people's lives, if the whole world decided, okay, we're not going to take the life of any human being, imagine what kind of world that would be. So never mind the fact that we followed all of these guidelines, but just to stick to maybe even one thing, how big of a difference that would make. Another thing is to practice forgiveness. Very often we ask forgiveness for the things that we have done. Sometimes, yeah, we ask forgiveness from God, we ask forgiveness and we go to confession. We ask forgiveness mostly from the divine. The most important thing is that we forgive ourselves, because we can ask as many times as we want for others to forgive us. But if we hold on to that guilt and that shame and we're unable to forgive ourselves, then no amount of forgiveness from others is going to help us. It's not going to free us in any way. So self-forgiveness is really key, and it might not be easy, and it's something that we can work toward little by little. There's also the level of forgiveness of forgiving others. So we not only forgive others for the harm that they've caused to us, but we also ask for their forgiveness for the harm that we may have caused to them knowingly or unknowingly. And then this one might not be so easy, which is forgiving difficult people. There are people that have caused extreme harm, and we might not know them directly. There might be some people that are out there very greedy, who are doing things that, literally cause harm to people. I know that there's folks who live in the squatters that some government folks will just light their homes on fire just to try and get rid of them. Or maybe even someone that has caused harm to us that, might have been a murderer, something. So being able to forgive difficult people, and that's also not very easy, but we try to practice forgiveness to the extent that we're able. When it's not possible now, we also ask ourselves, maybe perhaps when the time comes, may I be able to open up to forgiving this person. We even wish that. So when we have our consciousness, our clarity of mind and heart is there, then our conscience is clear, and that's the protection. That what this is offering is that we don't feel so worried about how people might perceive us. We don't also worry so much, or we don't regret the past when we're walking on that present moment. When we are present and we are clear as to what we're doing and what we're saying and what we're thinking, then it's not likely that we're going to cause any harm that's going to give us that guilt or that shame or that paranoia. So H.L. Mencken says, conscience is the inner voice that warns us somebody may be looking. The most important thing about this is to do the right thing even when no one is looking. To have that stability and that foundation enough to always stand firm in your values. And that is something that you have the possibility to control, and that can't be taken away by other people. So we've talked about the past and the future, and that we can't control those anymore. And that's what brings up all of the stress, is the fact that we have no control over it. But how we behave and how we act, how we speak, and how we think is very much in our control. And in that way, when we have that clarity, we don't have to look over our shoulders all the time.